There's no doubt that the coronavirus is still a very serious and ongoing crisis, and that a second wave of COVID-19 is something we all should be concerned about. But we're already set to run a $3.8 trillion deficit this year. That is an expenditure of taxpayer resources that is truly unprecedented, almost triple what we ran at the peak of the 2008 financial crisis. So if we're going to ask Congress and our legislators to pass another behemoth package, we've got to be sure that the first one, the $2.2 trillion CARES Act, actually worked and did what it was supposed to do. And it didn't. It created a broken unemployment system that paid most workers more to stay home than to go to work, that according to some reports took up to $1.5 trillion off the economy. It also created a loan program that was co-opted by big corporations, and it sent out stimulus checks to dead people in the amount of $1.4 billion. The first package wasn't a success. There's no reason to think a big-scale government intervention will suddenly work this time.
4.8 million jobs in June, 2.7 million jobs added in May. It's the best quarter in over 20 years for U.S. stocks. Thousands of businesses saved from closing. A PPP program that kept tens of thousands employed. Consumer confidence, that's also at a 3-month high, and it increased 240% more in June than was just predicted a couple days ago. The facts, they're in, and the government stepping up to help soften the blow COVID-19 had on our economy, it was a success. If we would have let the free markets work as magic, the economy could have more severely crashed, triggering a painful depression. Instead, we are quickly recovering after a severe but a short drop. Further evidence of this success is if you look at economic predictions that were happening in March, they painted a much bleaker picture than what we're currently enjoying. And Liz Ann Saunders, the highly respected chief investment strategist from Charles Schwab, she had this to say. Massive stimulus by the Fed on the fiscal side has propelled a stock market recovery at speeds unlike what we've ever seen.
Hello and welcome back to another Millennial Minute. I'm David Grasso. You've already heard from our guests, Brad Polumbo, a fellow at the Foundation for Economic Education, and Nev Harris, a financial contributor. So should the federal government be giving out more economic aid? As you suggested, Brad, it's been quite a splash, but Nev, you're suggesting that it's needed. Why is that?
I think that the government has stepped in when everything was going to pot and has been able to bridge the gap between the problems that were happening in the economy right now and what could have been happening in the future. So, which means that we could have had a much worse state, and we've risen up out of the ashes of what was the COVID crisis, and we're doing actually pretty well right now. The economy is looking to recover quite nicely.
So, Brad, I'm going to say something very crass. I received a stimulus check, and I really did not need it. Okay, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to pay that back in interest. Is that your general sentiment on a lot of the stimulus?
The stimulus checks didn't work, and it never made sense in the beginning to send people, like I'm a journalist, my salary was uninterrupted. I could work from home just fine. It never made sense to send aid to everyone, regardless of who needed it, when you could have taken a more narrow and concentrated approach. Polling shows that only, I believe, 40% of the stimulus checks were immediately spent, which was the goal, obviously, of those checks. And the government literally sent checks to dead people. It also sent these checks based on 2018 and 2019 tax data that represented the realities of the financial status before the pandemic. So if you lost your job, it didn't even take into account that when it determined your eligibility for a stimulus check. So the whole thing was a disaster, frankly, and it doesn't make sense to think that the next time will magically be different.